Thanks for joining us today. My name is Corey Pierce, and I'm the Marketing Director here at ChurnZero, and I'd like to welcome you to our webinar titled Ready to Scale, the Tech Stack That Drives Your Digital Customer Success Program. Before we get started, I'd like to remind you that we are recording this session, and we'll be sending out a link tomorrow. And throughout the presentation, please submit your questions, and we will try and answer as many of them as we can by the end of this webinar. Now, I'm pleased to introduce to you our presenters for today. First, we have Aniko Zubair, who is the Vice President of Customer Success at Insided, which is a customer success community platform that is built specifically for B2B SaaS businesses. And we're also joined by Hunter Montgomery, who is the CMO here at ChurnZero, which is a customer success management platform. Together, they'll both be walking us through the product categories and solutions that their teams and customers are embracing to build out digital customer success programs. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Hunter, to get our discussion started.
Great. Thanks, Corey. So the first thing I think we want to kind of set the stage, and that is kind of defining what a tech stack is. And tech stack is not new to anybody in the SaaS world. In fact, on the marketing side, Scott Brinker started his whole tech stack landscape 2011, and he had 150 tools in that landscape. 2020 version of it has 8,000. So there are tools everywhere for everybody in a SaaS world, and building a tech stack can be kind of overwhelming and a little intimidating. So kind of understanding kind of what you're trying to do, I think, is a really good first step before you start the process. So kind of setting the stage, sort of basic ideas of, the idea is to streamline the data across multiple systems in order to organize, manage, support, engage, measure, and track your customers. That's a pretty basic way of one of the advantages of doing this. It also helps you kind of minimize a lot of the things that become repeatable and that are kind of low effort and low impact, but things that you need to get done. And that also is kind of where a tech stack can help. And the last side is really tech stack can help you kind of optimize your interaction and your experience for your customer and what they're doing interacting with you, and having a lot of different touch points. So when you kind of look at these four areas and you're able to address them, that's a good way to think about what a tech stack is for a SaaS company.
Amazing. I want to jump into why you should actually care, because I think a lot of people talk about your tech stack and what's in your tool belt and what are CSMs using today or customer teams using today. But when you should actually care is when your CS team is actually evolving and growing and scaling. And that's what we're obviously going to be talking about today primarily. But as your CS team is evolving and growing comes new technology. You can't be based on one type of tool to fit it all. I think we're way past that when it comes to our tech stack that we use as a customer success discipline. So you should be caring because CS is evolving. If you talk about CS 10 years ago versus what it is today, 10 years ago, I'm pretty sure a lot of people in the audience can resonate using a CRM tool or some other tool in order to really optimize your CS efforts. And where it is today is there is a lot more to choose from, and new CS teams come new technology, but also it's an opportunity for you guys to really be data driven when you are in customer success. I think a lot of people hear that often over and over again, and when you do become more data driven as a CSM, a CS team leader, or a vice president of customer success, you actually get a seat at the table because everyone in the business is looking at the data and the data that your customers are doing with your product, how they're using it, what they're using it for, and just having that data at your fingertips makes all the difference when you are scaling as well. And then finally, another reason why you should definitely care about your tech stack is it allows you to grow as your customer base grows. A lot of times when you're effectively and efficiently scaling your team, you have to definitely look at different tools in order to support your growing customer base. The customer you had at customer 1 is definitely different than the customer you had at customer 100, 1,000, and 10,000. So when you are scaling your customers and the types of customers you're bringing on, you definitely want to make sure you have that right tool set for your team to also scale as well. So those are the main reasons why you should be caring about what types of tool your team is using. Awesome. So let's talk about what to think about when you're actually building out your CS tech stack. I think this is also intimidating when you're first starting and scaling. And the first thing really is to identify primary CS strategies and goals. So keep it really simple and basic. Really map out your customer journey. Really think about what is it that you're trying to achieve with your customers and for your customers. And once you have those primary strategies in place and you are able to really identify what the long-term goal is, you can then start to look at the right tech stack for those goals for your customers.
And the next point on this is also budget, right? Budget is always a concern, especially for CS organizations that maybe you're not used to that and having a budget or asking for money. But one of the things you also need to remember is there are additional costs in just the software. There may be services that you require. There may be additional users that you need. The other issue is kind of implementing it. What are the internal resources you need? Do you need your dev team to help? Do you need your IT team to help? The SaaS world is littered with unused tools that someone thought was a great thing to have, but once they finally got it in place, the hurdle to get it implemented and used was too high because they did not think through all the resources that they're going to need to get that live.
Yeah, and coming into, again, making sure that you have the right resource, you need to also have that resource to help you really organize and prep your data. Let's be honest, no one's data is perfect, no one's data is organized and clean, and you definitely need that resource available to help you prep it, organize it, and make sure you're able to sync data across multiple systems. Because as Hunter alluded to before, and as we've been already talking about, there's no one perfect tool that fits every part of the customer journey. You need to definitely look at your tool stack and your tech stack and make sure that you are, scaling and making sure your data is able to sync across multiple systems in order to see success with your tool set.
And so now we've got the tools, we have our strategy, we have our budget. We can't forget about what the future is going to look like, right? If you are successful with your tool, you may have more users, so now you need more budget. You may decide that the tool you have today, you may outgrow it, so you need to keep that in mind. There are many versions in the SaaS world we know, right? You have to move from a certain version to enterprise, and enterprise is going to cost more. But if you are successful, you need to be aware of that and be prepared to know that you're going to grow into a different tool. So it's always important to think about where you're going with your tech stack, because you'll get there sooner than you think. So being able to be prepared and even letting your executives know, hey, in 2 years we may need to upgrade. Just want you to know, but this is something we're preparing for. So always think about one eye ahead.
Yep, and on that as well, while you are predicting for the future and making sure that you are anticipating growth of your teams, it's also really important to think about cross collaboration and how other teams can also buy into the tech stack that you're buying into as well. Customer success as a discipline, as an organization, covers a breadth of different things that you're doing every single day, but that also means interacting with your product team, with your sales team, with your marketing team, and you really need to make sure that the tool and the tech stack that you're bringing on board and that you're hoping to grow with as your team grows is thinking about the cross collaboration and what it means to actually use this tool across different teams, not just the customer team.
So an extension of that, right? You want to make your team more successful and efficient and internally. You also need to look externally, because part of the idea of the tech stack we mentioned earlier is to make your customers more efficient, right? You want them to be self-sufficient in many ways. It could be a chat bot. It could be, a learning platform. There are a lot of different ways to do it. And now that your data is integrated, you know when you need to push them to certain areas. You know if they're a certain segment, maybe a size of organization, maybe features they're using. The more you know about them, the more you can give them information and tools on their own that make their life even easier, because the last thing they want to do always is get on a call with you or open a ticket. If they can fix or get things on their own, it makes their experience with you that much better.
And finally, no matter how much you scale and how much you grow, I think the one thing that we always want to remind ourselves is to really be human first and the human element. So whenever you're bringing in any sort of tech stack, any new tool functionality as you scale your customer success efforts, at the end of the day, the other person on the other side of the interaction is a human, and they want that human first element, and they want that human interaction. So whatever tech stack and however you choose to scale and grow your CS efforts, just remember to come back to that human element and make sure that you're really thinking of your customer first and making sure that you're engaging with them with that human first approach.
All right, so the way we want to talk about this is kind of looking at the different tech stack needs by kind of growth stage of an organization. That's typical for SaaS. We're all growing fast, and we're at different stages. So we're going to look at early, growth, and mature. So the first one is going to be the early stage. Many of us have been there, right? Small number of employees. The CS structure is kind of more about being reactive. It's probably a lot of on the support side. And this is also where we call the heroes. The heroes are the people who have done everything, right? They implement you. They're your CSM. They may be a support person. Also the stage where even the CEOs get involved and they jump in on calls and help with customers. So definitely the hero section. And then the other part is budget. Probably not much budget for you all here. You're probably drafting off other tools from other departments, sales, marketing, any of that stuff. So you're just starting to get a little bit into the CS side, but not quite there yet.
Yep. As Hunter said, maybe you don't have the budget yet, or you're really a small outfit when it comes to a CS team. But what you should really be thinking about if you are at this point of your CS journey is really about getting your communication channels under control and in one place, whether it's using some sort of tool to do that, or if you are using emails or something, just make sure you're evaluating your process at this point and that all customer facing activity is managed by individuals and that you do have some sort of tracking system when it comes to being managed. So, it can be homegrown, it can be a DIY, it can be whatever you want at this point, but just make sure you are thinking of your process as you are thinking of scaling and growing. And also at this point, it's really important to maybe even start thinking of a self-service tool to really help grow your team. If you are just a team of like 1 or 2 customer success professionals or customer support people at this point, you really need to make sure your communication is clear and you're tracking it and you're able to maybe even move into self-service or some sort of knowledge base or something along those lines in order to start seeing your customers help each other, help themselves, and also keep communication in one place as well, because that'll only help your team in the future as you guys grow and scale and think about the next steps of a CS tech stack. Amazing. So let's move into the next stage of growth. So you guys have definitely gone past the initial stage of smaller CS team. Now maybe you have a company size of 20 to 100 employees. Your CS team has a new structure. Maybe even you've brought in a CS lead at some point. And at this point, your tech stack is possibly growing, and you definitely need to start thinking about budget and what sort of budget you need to now, really a lot to a CS tool. Now, maybe you're starting in the early stages of using a Salesforce or some sort of, CRM system in order to make sure you're making all your channels of communication in one place. But then you need to start thinking of growth as well, and also, scaling and what comes next, and really making sure your efforts are being well received by your new leadership as well, because that really justifies having a budget for a CS tech stack or a CS tech tool.
Right, so as you have more data, you have more tools, this enables you to actually do more in terms of measuring and metrics. So you also need to be important, you want to be intentional in what you are trying to track and the data you have available. You're not going to have everything at this point, but there's probably some key metrics that you want to use, and by leveraging the data coming from different tools, that enables you to be much more kind of aware of where your customers are and not be a little bit more, as you talked before, be a little more proactive. This is also the point when you can kind of start taking advantage of a lot of the data you've gained in the early stage in terms of feedback from customers, internal resources that you've created to really kind of push this out to an external knowledge base. And knowledge bases are kind of one of the best ways to kind of share all that knowledge you have to your customers, and also internally to your own team would like to use that. So knowledge base is a good way to kind of get that going. Also, this is when you're going to start doing a lot of specialization. We mentioned before, right? We had the CEO doing maybe tech calls. Now you have an implementation person, you have your CSM team expanding, the support team, you have an operations person. I mean, that's one of the roles that we've seen is very, very popular now in the CS world. Operations, sales has ops, marketing has ops. We know that CS team definitely could use operations to take advantage, especially if you have a complicated tech stack. Also, besides specialization in people, you're going to specialize in tools. Like we feel like this is a very good point to get off your CRM and get into a CS management tool, because that is where you start to really take advantage of addressing and managing customers the way a CS team needs to, right? A CRM is much more for sales and opportunities and tasks, where a CS tool can be much more proactive in how you interact with your customers and the data you're collecting. So that's also a good point. And then the last one, this also is a good point to start to think about a customer community. Customer communities are great because not only they give you some insight into what questions customers are looking at, but customers now leverage other customers. I mean, in many cases, some of your best users are the customers already using your platform. Like they see things, they experience a lot of different things. So having them being able to communicate, you need to make sure your team is ready for it, but a customer community is a great way to kind of get back to that self-service model we talked about before. Give them, empower them to find answers as quickly and easily as they want to.
Amazing. Thanks for talking about community already, Hunter. But yes, it is so important at some point as you mature as a CS organization to make sure you are thinking of community first. You want to be able to have your customers self-serve themselves. You really want to have customers really engaging with not only your support team and your CS team, but also with each other. And that's where we see, again, a more mature stage of a CS tech stack come in. At this point, you have a team that's specialized in support, a team that's specialized in customer success, maybe even an onboarding team, but you also have possibly a community team emerging as well. So your CS team structure is definitely scaling, it's more specialized. You definitely have a vertical focus on each different type of the customer journey, for example, and you definitely do have a budget established. At this point, you're no longer borrowing for marketing or stealing for sales. You are using your own tech stack. You have a matured team that's able to use a support platform, maybe like a Zendesk or a Freshdesk or an Intercom. And then like Hunter mentioned as well, you definitely want to have a proactive system in place in order to make sure you're managing your customer success journey like ChurnZero. And then you are also using that one-to-many model of engaging with your customers through a community platform like Insighted, or just making sure you are reaching out in a one-to-many fashion as well.
Right. So now that we have all the data and have all the tools, also on this, talk about the tech stack. A lot of it also is integration with other systems, right? You want to be integrated with the finance system. There may be a product side system that you want to be part of in terms of ticketing. So now we kind of built this permanent tech stack, and what are we going to do with it? And we talked about like a lot of it is being more predictable and using the data across these platforms to have people take the actions you want them to take, because once they do those, then they're going to be successful with your platform. So our example here is I would say pretty basic tech stack, but in many ways probably the core one that any CS organization would need in terms of what you are trying to get your customers to do, and then the information you want to have about them. So it kind of goes both ways. And the last part of kind of this cutting costs by automating. A lot of the part now is when you have these systems integrated, you do not need to have user license for all these systems for your entire team, right? Data is now flowing. So my CS team does not need a license for the CRM. They may all not need a license for the learning management, because we're bringing the data across into one system. And now I know if someone's taking a course or not taking a course, or now I know when someone's renewal is happening and what their contract value is, or things like that. So by sharing a lot of the data now, I'm really making it much more efficient, just even for my tech stack in terms of user costs. I'm reducing that. So this mature tech stack can go a long way in helping you as a CS organization, and even your large organization, and being much more efficient in how you spend your dollars and how you really address proactively what your customers need and keep them happy.
Amazing.
Poll time, Corey.
Yeah, we're
Full
going
time.
to launch a poll now. Let me.
So now, based on all the information we've shared with you, we hope everyone can kind of put themselves in one of these 3 stages.
Really curious where everyone in the audience is finding themselves today in their tech stack and their maturity.
I'm gonna give it a few more seconds to let people respond. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and close the poll and push out the results to everyone.
Okay. I guess I'm not terribly surprised. This is a
Yeah.
group of people are out looking for information, trying to learn more, and the growth stage, a lot's going on, and probably a lot of questions that need to be answered. But I mean, this
Definitely.
is
I feel
yeah,
like a lot of people are in the growth stage based on what I see out there and everyone sharing about, where CS teams are heading and how much growth is happening as well. Seems very appropriate that most of our audience is in the same stage.
yeah. It's also a good stage to be in because you probably have started to make decisions, but not all the decisions, right? Can learn some lessons, find some other tools, network with people in your space and find out what people are using and not using, kind of share the tech stack because there's a lot of different use cases and tools out there. So yeah, I'd be excited to be in the growth stage. I think we're kind of in that growth stage too. So it's fun.
Yeah, I think it is fun. I think you get to try out a lot of things too. Like you mentioned, Hunter, like you get to try out a new tool, you get to experiment, you get to really build that whole process more than just, coming into something that's already done. But let's jump into why is it important to have an integration strategy. I think Hunter alluded to this before, and it's super important to make sure that your tools are talking. Your data is not just siloed in one place, because nobody wants data in one place, because then when you look at your tech stack, you're going to have like 20 different tools open in order to find any information. But having data in so many places just adds so much more work to the day-to-day of your customer success team. Your CSM then spends more time actually looking for the data rather than actually being impactful and bringing value to your customers. So having it all in one place will really allow for your CSMs to have those important conversations and deliver value to your customers probably quicker and faster because that data is readily available. And data really is power nowadays. I think that the way you use your data and how you tell the story with your data is really how you succeed as a CSM. And being able to be successful with data is super key as a customer success manager as well. See, we're struggling with the slide there, Corey. I'll give you a minute. Okay. Technical glitch. I can keep going and talk about data all day while we wait for the slide to come back up. But in all honesty, data is just so important to have across multiple different tools. And as you integrate with different tech stacks and different tools, it's so important to keep that all in one place. Hunter, did you want to add something in there in regards to data and data silos?
Yeah, I do. So I was talking to Borlia on our team about the whole data silos, and she gave a great analogy. It's a little bit like playing telephone, right? You have the sales team close the deal. Now they have to hand it over to the implementation team. If you don't have systems integrated, it's a little bit of maybe it's an email exchange, and then the implementation team gets it and they put it in their onboarding tool and they do things. And then when it's ready to hand over to the CSM, again, it's another manual process of handing things off. And when your systems are connected, things get lost. They either get completely lost or even diluted. So by the time it gets to the CSM, you may not have the full story. And then it happens at the other end when you're doing a renewal. If you don't know maybe what maybe they had a special contract or they had a special offer or there was some history in that negotiations way back when, you may come in kind of tone deaf when you're coming in for the renewal. And the customer's like, wait a minute, I already talked about this with my sales rep. So having these silos, it has a ripple effect across your entire organization, and trying to breaking those down and have it just be sort of this seamless flow of data goes a long way in terms of helping you with your customers, also helping your customers feel comfortable and confident that you actually care about them and know who they are and know what they're doing.
Definitely. And I think you already touched on it, Hunter, about eliminating redundancy across tools, because you definitely don't want to have people looking in multiple places and then again, data being, watered down because it is in multiple different places. So it goes back to the whole having data in one place. And if you have it all integrated into one place, it not only saves you time, but it helps with not having to run from pillar to post to find things. I swear, if you think about how many tabs I already have open that I'm looking right now at my screen, you definitely just don't want to have to look at 10 tabs to even tell when is the renewal coming up, when's the last time we interacted, did they open a support ticket, how often are they engaging with us. All this stuff should be readily available, and it really, if you have that all in one tool, or at least integrated across multiple tools, you're definitely going to see, at least I'm hoping, a little bit more productivity from your day rather than looking for it all in different places.
Yeah, and one more point on that, and the redundancies of tools. There may be a tool that somebody else in another department is using that you don't even know about. Like, one of the things is asking questions. So you may decide you want to do a chat bot or a chat for customers. Marketing may already have one on the website because they're doing it for demand gen. Or it could be something where you would love to know more about who your customers are, what industry are they in, what firmographic information. But it's very likely that the sales team probably has some sort of tool that's bringing that in and cleaning data up and updating it. So knowing what other departments are using and doing may make your life easier too. You may just leverage off of what they have, or if they don't have something, you may be able to say, hey, I'm going to go buy this tool. Let's split the budget because I think it'll help us both. But let's not pay for it twice. And so that's definitely one way to just ask questions, be aware, just know that there's tools all over your organization, and there may be something that already exists that maybe you could use yourself.
Yeah, and I think that leads really easily into the last point on the slide, which is like seamless team workflows and processes. And I think that if you have a playbook that then ask your CS team to then go and check your CRM, or go check product data, or go check usage data here, or anything like that, where you are going from one tool to the next, it's just gonna make preparing for whatever customer call you're having that much more difficult. And it is so important to have those things talking to each other, because rather than spending the time to go and actually find that information and figure out what the workflow is, whether the product team holds that information or the sales team holds that information, it's just really important to have the right data points in that workflow and process for your CS team, so you can actually action it rather than just looking for the steps in the workflow. I think Hunter also talked about that, where maybe there's something that your product team is doing, and if it's well integrated into your CS tech stack, you don't have to go and chase 10 people to go find that information. Rather, it's right there at your fingertips, and now it's up to you as the CSM or the CS person to go and use that information rather than chasing it down. I think that, yep.
All right, keep going.
Amazing. So let's talk about how you can use your CS tech stack to optimize for retention. This is so key. And the first thing I would have to say is knowing where your customers are in their journey and life cycle is how you optimize your tech stack for success. So it's super important to make sure you're marking milestones and time to value at every single stage in your customer journey, because your customer experience is important no matter they're in onboarding, in retention, in adoption, advocacy, you name it. But it's really important internally to make sure you have that journey mapped out. And it's also important to make sure the customer experience is the same no matter if you have high touch or digital led approaches. Remember, your customer is your customer at the end of the day. They don't care if they're the highest paying or the lowest paying. They are a human, they are your customer, they're expecting a certain level of experience with your tool, your product, and you want to be able to give that to them. So when you are mapping out your tech stack for scale, it's just so important to make sure that your team is able to deliver success to your customer, and that your customer is seeing that success no matter what stage of the journey they are with you. And especially when you're obviously optimizing for retention, you want to make sure that your customer is feeling the love, again, digital or one-to-one, and that they really feel that they are, looked after, and they understand the use of your product and the return on investment on your product. And that leads me into the opposite side of retention. Is like forecasting churn. We're all scared of that word. A little bit of churn never hurt, but at the same time, you want to be able to show early leading indicators of when a customer is going to actually churn, or what are the key moments that a customer might be struggling with your product, or they're unable to adopt something new, a new feature functionality. And again, that goes back to mapping out your customer journey and being really intentional of understanding where your key milestones are, what your lagging indicators are. And this starts with the clear customer journey and defining milestones as well. I think, Hunter, did you want to add something to this one as well?
Yeah, I mean, what the integrated data also brings to us in terms of, we've all talked about health scores, right? Health scores are really important in forecasting and predicting how likely a customer is to renew. And so by having more data points, I mean, everyone is going to have a different equation for their health score. What factors are more important to them as they learn. They'll look at data. I mean, instinctively they'll know. I mean, they may say, we've had one customer said, look, if our customer uses this one feature, it's one feature, it's like a 90% chance that they're going to renew, almost 100%. Like, they know that instinctively. And so now what they want to do is get that customer to take this action. And if they don't, then they're a little worried, and now they can be a little bit more proactive. So what this whole integrated tech stack does, it gives us all the different data points to build a very, very robust health score. And from there, we can be a little bit more proactive. I mean, we know from our sales team, right? They do forecasting. They know likelihood to close a deal versus not, and what their ACV is going to be. There's no reason a CS team can't do the same, right? They can start to forecast based on the information that they have. It's a little harder, right? It's because in sales, you're just talking to someone, they say, yeah, I think I'm going to buy, or I may not, and they kind of look at indicators. On the CS side, we really have to leverage all the data that we have. So this is definitely their whole retention thing, and the health scores are key part of the tech stack.
Yeah, and I think coming to the last point is really allowing your customers to dictate how and when they want to interact with you, and how involved they want to be with your customer success or customer team. We're all busy. Not everyone has an executive sponsor to have a quarterly business review every quarter. If I look at my team's tech stack, we have 10 plus tools, and I know Hunter alluded to like hundreds of tools nowadays available to CS professionals. And like, do I really need to have a 1 hour executive business review with every single one of the tools that my team uses? And the case is probably no, to be honest, but doesn't mean that the tool is not valuable, doesn't mean that we don't value the tool at our own organization. But it's really important for those types of customers, whether they're in onboarding or in possibility of churn or even retention, is really to make sure that you're able to engage with them the way they want, whether that's through a community aspect of posting regularly on a community and they're posting back, or they're interacting with other customers on the community, or that could be in a webinar format like this one, or that could be in a digitally led video email that you're sending out as well. It's just really important to make sure that you allow your customers to interact when and how they would like. And also, we're seeing a lot of success tools that have been purchased that are able to then scale these efforts, and being able to really interact with your customer digitally first, rather than the typical one-to-one that we normally see as well.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of ways now for organizations to share a lot of the information in their app out to their customers, right? Integration with Slack or Teams, right? There's a great way to push information out into a common tool that everybody uses. Other ways, like we're doing, we can push out almost like it's a virtual or digital QBR, where we push a report out so the customers can see how they are using their own platform. They don't have to get online with someone. They can see their usage, and then that makes it easier for them to understand quickly where they are. And if usage is great, then everyone's good. If they see issues, then there's a reason to have a conversation. But that's where I think, again, another example of where the tech stack is, we can really help our customers in a way help themselves.
Amazing. Let's jump into how to drive revenue and increase efficiencies by leveraging customer data across all the different touch points. So that's a mouthful already, but but let's also talk about this, because we've been talking about the customer journey and we've been talking about, all different points, data points, how to utilize leading, lagging indicators. And one thing that I think that is really important when you are looking at the entire customer journey and how you're trying to leverage an opportunity is in the expansion. I mean, I think we're not all salespeople in CS, but we are trying to identify expansion, and an early leading indicator is what was defined in those goals that you brought on when you brought that customer on, and a success plan, or all those things that you set up in the beginning. You should also tie these back to hard metrics and try to track them throughout the entire customer journey. And this can be done through product usage data metrics. This can be done through, how many seats they purchase versus how many seats they're utilizing. It's so important to make sure that these metrics are tied to their goals, because especially if you are scaling your CS efforts and you're not necessarily interacting with your customers every week, every month, or doing those regular business reviews, you want to be able to make sure that your customer comes out feeling like they definitely got use out of their product that you're trying to get them to utilize. And the best way is to tie metrics to those high level goals that they were adopting, and making sure that they continue to adopt those goals using those metrics as well.
Yeah, and if I could add on a little bit in terms of the expansion, and we talked about this a little earlier, the more you know about your customers, the more you will have in terms of relating to what you think they may need. If you bring in a firmographic and you see that there's a certain industry that has a higher adoption rate of one of your new features, maybe you turn around and do a campaign just to that industry, because there's a reason and there's an uptick, that there's something in that feature that resonates with them. So there's lots of ways to take the information you have, analyze it, and then push it back out to customize and really personalize your interaction with your customers, so they feel like that okay, well, this is great, I do need that feature. How did you know that? Or it makes sense. So there's definitely a lot of ways to take all the different signals you're getting and use it to find new opportunities for expansion.
Amazing. And I think jumping into the next one, which I think everyone's always looking for, is a good customer advocate, someone that's truly singing your praises to, new referrals, other customers. And you want to make sure that you're having those interactions to fuel the conversation, to build those customer advocacy programs. And the best way in order to do that is really to introduce your customers to each other, continue to facilitate those conversations, make sure your star advocates are speaking to one another, or even to new customers. A lot of times you can leverage your existing customers to actually even help onboard or share best practices with your new onboarding customers. And yes, of course, you can bring that back to sales, because sales is always going to ask you for a referral because they love doing that. But I think you can also even leverage your customers to help one another out, and obviously community helps with that. But even building out, some sort of notification in order to really let you guys know, hey, our customer is doing so many great things, either singing our praises about us externally, or they're interacting with us, or they're doing webinars, or they're doing referrals. All of these are indicators that really tell your customer team that this person is really a star advocate and a super user of your tool. And it's really great to make sure you share those success stories internally as well, because it's really helpful for internal teams to really see what success means with your product.
Yeah, no, and I got a couple examples of that. We have a number of customers use Slack and G2 reviews, right? So they can, integrated within the system, you can then push out into a Slack channel all your positive G2 reviews. And so now, not only sharing it with your CS team, you're sharing it with the entire company. So everyone can go read that. They don't have to have access to your CS tool. They don't need to log into the community if they want to kind of see what people are talking about. They get it pushed out to them. And then another example of one customer is doing is they do kind of success stories within their system, and they capture them. But in the same way, then they push them out to the company through Slack. And now the marketing team doesn't need to go in and read all of the reviews on another platform. They just go through and see the success stories and say, oh, wow, customer ABC just talked about this thing, this feature, this something that really was positive for them. And now the marketing team knows, I'm going to go out and reach out to this person. Maybe I'll check with the CSM first, make sure it's okay. But now I know I have some people I can actually go and talk to instead of having to filter through the reviews on their own. So there's so many ways now to push that out and make it efficient for not just the CS team, but the entire company to see how happy the customers are. And on the flip side, you can also see when people aren't happy, right? It's not always positive. You want to know if someone's very unhappy and you want to be able to address it quickly. So there are definitely good ways of grabbing that information.
Yep. And I think the next point is really, really important as well. And I think everyone in CS is trying to do that, is trying to speed up time to value. And it is so keen to show so much value for your product to your customer as quickly as possible. So knowing goals is the first step. So knowing what your customer wants to achieve with your product is really the first step. And then attaching metrics to it is how you then start tracking that time to value. And it gives you a place to really track something and really being able to see what the next step in the timeline is. It makes things more actionable and makes you hit, the deadlines maybe a little bit faster, because suddenly you now have an action, you have a success plan, you have a metric, and now you definitely want to do something in 30, 60, or 90 days. And really being able to share that with your customer and making sure you're tracking those metrics throughout is really how you're going to be able to leverage, customer data at the same time of making sure that you're speeding up time to value as well. Hunter, do you have anything to add on that one as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit it on the nose. It is important to know, again, where people are in their journey, and it may not just be the initial onboarding. It may be down the road where now you've figured out a segment that is a power user, and there's a feature that this group can really take advantage of. So it's, as I mentioned earlier, it's the more you know, the better you are at targeting, and then the more you can give people, quickly what they need to be successful, without having to just do a check-in call, right? And that those are always hard to find information from people. You say, oh, what can we do to make it better? And they're so busy they don't have time to tell you. But if the data is showing that they're doing really well with a certain feature, or they've added users, that may help you be much more proactive in your suggestions to them to really show them the value in not only your tool but your entire organization.
Yep. Totally agree. And one last thing to really consider before we wrap up today is really the reduction in human capital. I think having a tech stack is so key, because the most expensive part of your CS organization are the people you hire. Don't get me wrong, they're amazing. You need people to succeed, but you need data and process to scale. I think people really get things started. In order to scale, you need the right tech stack to be able to leverage and then grow with you as you add on more customer. And growth is all about adding on the right tools and using those tools to optimize your current human resources. Like, you want to get the best out of your CSMs, you want to get the best out of your customer support, and you want to give them the tools in order to really succeed at their jobs. And we live in a world surrounded by technology. I'm just looking around my desk at how much technology is around me right now. And so if you really want to be able to scale and grow and service your customers, no matter what part of their journey they're in, we shouldn't be afraid of technology replacing human, because we are a human first department. But a CSM is only going to get better at the job they're doing by having the right tools or analytics within a tool to really actually see results and being able to see yourself grow into the next position, but also seeing your customers grow, because there's only so much one person can do without the right tools in place. Do you want to wrap up, Hunter, on any of that?
That's a great point, because a lot of this is this efficiency goes across multiple departments within the organization, right? If you are going to make your customers more successful with the product, maybe they open fewer tickets, or maybe they want to expand to a new feature and you have a quick how-to video from your learning system, education system. There's so many different ways that as you get more efficient and attach all these different systems together, customers get more efficient, and then they need kind of less of the hand holding, because now they feel like they can really do it. And you're also relieving pressure from other departments, because the customers don't need as much from other groups. So no, it's one of the key points with the tech stack. All right.
Awesome.
Time for Q&A.
Yeah, so thank you both Hunter and Anika for walking us through the tech stack and the maturity stages there. We've already had some questions come in, but I'd like to invite the rest of the audience to go ahead and submit any questions you have on CS tech stack related topics. So let's see, our very first question is, any tips for making the case for getting budget to purchase tools for my CS team? Sales and marketing seems to be getting all the new resources, but our team seems to be left behind.
Oh,
Anika,
man.
maybe you take that one first, and then maybe Hunter, you could
Yeah.
Sure,
come in on the
sure.
marketing.
I think we're in a very, very different space where, first of all, you're having CS departments that report into different heads versus when I think of CS before, it was a part of marketing and sales and it was an add-on. So that's a really great part. But I think in order to get budget, like I think when we were talking about how human resource is the most expensive part of the way of scaling your entire org. So I would propose bringing it to whoever the head of is, whoever is actually holding your budget purse strings, is really proving out to them the return on investment of a tool versus how much it would cost to bring a person on board for the same price. Because, you know, a human could probably do the job, but would probably be 2, 3, maybe even 4 times more expensive than a tool that you need to do the job. So I think just showing whoever, you know, holds the purse strings, whether it's your CFO or the head of the department, just showing them, hey, this is how much I need in order to handle like 5,000 customers, or we can hire 10 more customer success managers at this cost. And so I think just making it really crystal clear and breaking down those two costs will probably be able to make sense to any CFO. Like a CFO is going to want to save money. So if you can figure out a cheaper option of how you can scale, they'll probably allot you the budget.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I would say go make friends with a CFO or the finance person to find out what metrics they care about. I mean, you know, being in the marketing side, you know, 10, 15 years ago, all of a sudden we could start showing value with a marketing automation platform. We could say what the cost per lead was, what the revenue per lead was. Once we could start showing the impact, it made a big difference in terms of getting money. So with a CS team can say, what's the metric we care about? Is it, you know, churn rate, obviously, retention rate, net revenue retention? There's all the metrics now that SaaS organizations look at. If you can tie a lot of your performance to those, then it makes that conversation with the CFO much easier. Well, I can help you reduce this or increase that or add more expansion revenue. If these tools will let me do these things and I'll show you, then the conversation happens. And then you become, you know, you want to be considered like a sales or a marketing department. You want to be, you know, valued in terms of, okay, these are the tools that will really make this department better, and this is how it's going to help the overall business of the company.
Excellent. Our second question says, what can we do to make sure the human element comes through when using automation?
I can go first again. I think I think just being intentional with how you interact and also not using the same form or method all the time. So for example, like only using email marketing campaign can be very dry, very boring. I would say mix up your medium. So maybe sometimes it's a video, maybe sometimes it's an email, maybe sometimes it's, you know, a round table where you have 10 different people coming together to facilitate a conversation, to learn from each other. I would say in order to make sure that your customer feels like you're human, you really have to put a face behind all the emails. And another way that I know a few of our customers do it is that they have like meet the team emails. So they very much put the face on an email and like a short intro. Hi, I'm Anika, I'm your customer success manager. And then suddenly you're a name and a human behind the email that's being sent. So there's different ways that I would say that you should try to interact with your customers first off, and then also just remember to interact in some cases as well one-to-one, whether it means in a smaller round table or something like a webinar or something along those lines.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. I mean, I think a lot of it too is about the voice you use, right? There should be a voice of the company. Parvi, you should really work probably your marketing department or area CS leader. What you don't want to have is have 10 different voices coming out for communications. Like so everyone's kind of got their own style, and then someone doesn't know if they're really who they're talking to, or it could kind of get off the rails a little bit. I mean, you don't want to dictate exactly how people communicate, but you also want people to represent your company and how you want to talk to customers. And so making sure it's consistent. And so someone feels like, oh, I think I'm talking to a human, even if it's automated, that someone wrote it properly with the thought of your company and how you want to interact with people, and it's consistent across your support team, to your CS team, to your sales team, like marketing communications. So putting my marketing hat on and talk about the voice, I do think it is important to kind of prevent that kind of robotic sort of impersonal touch.
Got it. All right, so we have a question that says the specialization of CS tech stack tools could be overwhelming, which would make it a full-time job just to vet utility of tools against budget and resources. Aside from a customer success platform, what are your top 5 high-value tools to consider? Also, I like how he said, aside from a customer success platform, I guess that might be a given. So any top tools that maybe Anika, that you can't imagine living without these days?
I'd say Zoom is one of them because that's the way we interact, or go to meeting or Teams or whatever you're using to interact as well. Aside from CS tools, because I'm almost going to say our CS tool as well as our community tool, because that's how we track and interact with our customers as well. I'm also just thinking of what else I have open right now. I have like tracking data of customers, so whatever that, but that's also integrated with all our other tools. So I feel like the CS tool is really key and monumental. And then as you scale like some other way of interacting, so maybe it's a video tool or some sort of like webinar tool or community or some other way of engaging. So I'd say that that's probably a good place to start. Also, I was thinking like chat's probably another one that's really, it's really fundamental.
Yeah, and I throw in there when you have the resources and I guess the maturity level, LMS, learning management is a great way to leverage all you're doing on the CS platform in terms of knowing where, because you can integrate people in their journey, on their onboarding, and they can hit milestones, and so it takes a lot off of the plate of the CS team that has to do kind of repetitive training and onboarding. So, and then the community. We have a community. It's a great resource for your customers too, because then it gets that self-service part. But those do take work and a little bit of effort. I would recommend to everybody, just go find your network of CS people and talk to them and find out what they're using and what works and what doesn't work, because there are a lot of tools out there, like the question said. And so it does take some research.
That's where CS ops would come in, I would say, almost. I think we've talked about this earlier, but I think it's super key and fundamental to have someone who's owning that budget, the tools that you're using, and what else that your CSMs might also need as well, or your customer facing team. So yeah.
Totally agree.
Awesome. Our next question says, any tips for getting team members on board with using new tools? So CS team members.
Oh, that's always a tough one. And I think that I think your new tool should be onboarding the team, not necessarily one person. That's my personal opinion. But I think another way is to show how it's going to make their lives easier. So a lot of times, like, we have so many different things open, so many different things that we're doing. But if you're actually showcasing, hey, when you do this, this, and this, it's actually going to make your life easier down the long. Because I think a lot of people see a new tool as more overhead, as more admin, as more, oh gosh, I have to like record this here, or I have to like do this. But when you do this, this, and this, showing them the end result of doing all of that and how it's going to make their lives easier down the road is usually a good way of getting someone to use a tool. We also internally gamify a lot of things. So we just say who our top users are and who, like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, this week, this person did X in this tool, and they're the shining new example of how this tool should best be used. So we use gamification and community a lot. So I would say maybe encouraging some sort of internal game to get people to use a new tool as well. But really showing them how easy their life will be using the tool is probably the best way to teach someone to use a tool.
Yeah, you totally hit it.
Let's see. Our next question is, there's a bunch to choose from, so I'm just trying to select one. We're thinking about adding a community to our tech stack, but aren't sure if our customers will be or will get engaged. Any recommendations on knowing when the right time is to introduce a community?
Oh, that's such a good question. Hunter, I could pass it to you, but I can also answer. But I think a lot of communities start from you wanting to get your customers engaged and having them talk to each other. But when you are starting a community strategy and you are thinking of launching a community, remember that it takes a while for any customer base to start engaging in a community. You can't expect instant sudden growth and sudden interest, but I think now more than ever, a lot of people are looking to communities to find best practices, to find how-tos, to find, how other people are doing things in the similar space that they're growing in as well. So I would say if you do have customers giving you constant feedback of, hey, what are your other customers doing? Or, hey, I saw this new feature release, but I'm not sure how to best use it. Or you're at a point where you have so many customers that your CSMs can't necessarily run regular trainings for that, a community space would probably be very well welcomed, and your customers would probably really want to engage on that level where they can interact with each other. But I don't think there's a space where your customers wouldn't want to talk to other customers, because I even think of all the tools I use and I'm like, oh, I'm always asking, how do your other customers do that? And that's where community comes in. So I'd say it's never a bad time to start, but I think most customers will receive community well, but it's really making sure you have that strategy to scale your community is really important.
Yeah, and also communicating well with your executives. I know even over here, trying to get everybody to understand, as Nika said, it's not just launch it and everyone's going to come and log in and it's going to be instant success. It is a process and it takes a while, and that's okay. That's expected. People have to be comfortable going in there and sharing information and posting. And we have an ambassador program, right? So we had 13 volunteers of our customers who wanted to be part of this, and part of it is they need to go in once a week and just post a question or answer a question, and they love to do it, right? There's a certain group of customers who want to be in front of all the other customers because they like to help. That's the beauty of kind of a little bit of the CS world too, is they're very like community managers, very helpful and supportive, and then just sticking with it. And it's not going to be an instant turn it on and it's working. So a little bit of patience, but it's well worth it.
Awesome. Our next question is, as you add in automation, how do you ensure that communication from the customer success team is consistent and on brand?
You want to take this first, Hunter? I feel like I keep taking it first.
Yeah, I mean, I guess part of it is having a communication or process with your marketing department. I mean, the marketing department are the one who writes a lot already, right? They write in your voice. You don't want to step in each other's toes if you say one thing and then the CS team is communicating something else to the customers. So have a relationship that works well with you in the marketing department, I think, because they do want to help, and it's worth the extra effort to make sure that communication does sound like it's coming from a human, and it's a little bit like on brand and other things. So I would just say work with a marketing department, or if you have some good writers within your team, as long as they know the voice of your company and then they can write to it, you can have confidence in that team to do it themselves too.
Yep, I don't have much more to add than what Hunter just said.
Awesome. We'll wrap it up with one last question. This might be a tough one, but it came in and seemed interesting. What do you think the next generation of customer success tools will look like? Any thoughts?
Ooh.
I mean, probably the way a lot of other departments are going, predictive, right? A little bit of AI. How are we going to, we already talked about, we use the data ourselves to build a health score, but is there a way for it to build the health score for you, right? We're doing that on the marketing side. Sales has a lot of tools out there. So, I mean, I know it's kind of an easy cop out to say that, but I know it's important. Right.
I think AI, or like being able to predict, being more predictive within already a predictive CS tech stack is very key. But I also think like having more of a CS tech stack that kind of helps you along the way, like in the sense of like as you're growing, like it naturally tells you at what stage you should be doing things. I know that maybe is also AI as well, but I think that having a well integrated tech stack that is able to then unlock next steps as you grow, because like the customer changes, the team size changes, what do you do next? I think having sort of that predictive availability within tools to say you should integrate with this next, or you should do this next, or something along those lines.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much for this awesome webinar presentation. And I'd like to thank our audience for joining us, and just want to remind everyone that we will be sending out a link to this recording tomorrow, so keep an eye out for that. And at the end of this webcast, a survey will pop up, and we'd appreciate it if you could just take a moment to provide your feedback. And if you did enjoy this webinar, I do want to invite everyone to our conference that ChurnZero is hosting in October in Washington, D.C., and we will be announcing a full agenda pretty soon. So please check that out at bigrig.com. Rig stands for red, yellow, green, which is talking about customer health scoring, and in case you were wondering what RIG stand for. But thanks again, everyone, for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.